July 1954, Haneda Airport, Tokyo. A businessman presents a passport from a country that does not exist on any map. Taured. He speaks fluent French and Japanese, carries legal currency from multiple nations, and has stamps from previous trips in his document. But when he is detained in a high-rise hotel, guarded by armed officers, he vanishes from a room with no balcony and no escape. Did he return to his own reality, or was he a glitch in ours?
We have a strange report for you tonight, coming out of the summer of 1954.
Well, that exact question faced officials at Tokyo's Haneda Airport, kicking off a baffling case. The scene? A hot July day in Tokyo. At first, everything seemed perfectly normal.
He seemed like a seasoned traveler, saying it was his third business trip to Japan that year. But when asked for his nationality, well, that's when things took a very strange turn.
He said it with total confidence, but officials, they'd never heard of a country called Taured.
What's more, his passport looked real. It even had valid entry stamps from Japan.
So officials brought out a world map asking him to point out exactly where Taured was.
He pointed right to Andorra, but grew angry, insisting that wasn't the country's name.
He claimed his country was 1,000 years old, and that this Andorra was a fiction.
Checks on his story came up empty. His company, Hotel Bank, none of it was real.
Thinking he might be a criminal, authorities detained him overnight in a nearby hotel.
They took no chances. The room was high up, with 2 guards posted at the only door.
But the next morning, he was gone, vanished from that sealed and guarded room.
And get this, all his documents disappeared from the security office too, as if he never existed. So where did he go? With no rational answer, the whole incident became the stuff of legend. People wondered, parallel universes, a time traveler, or just a very elaborate hoax? But a real-world case a few years later offers a much more down-to-earth explanation. Let me introduce you to John Allen Kuchar Zagris, a con man arrested in Tokyo in 1960.
The details aren't a perfect match, but the core element is there, a man with a fake passport.
You see, Zagris invented a whole country for his scams, even giving it a capital city.
His case actually got so notorious, it was brought up in the British House of Commons. So what's the real story? A traveler between worlds, or just a fascinating myth?
The most disturbing part, his personal belongings, his passport, his driver's license, and his checkbook all vanished from the airport's secure locker at the exact same moment he disappeared from the hotel. No traces, no fingerprints, no record of him ever entering the country. Let's trace the clues left at the immigration desk and see if Taured was a lie or a truth from a different world.
All right, get ready for one of the strangest, most baffling travel stories you will ever hear. Today, we're diving deep into the mystery of the man from Taured.
Seriously, just think about that for a second. Everything you know about where you're from, your entire national identity, what if it was just gone from every map in the world? Well, for one mysterious traveler, this absolute nightmare became a reality one summer day back in 1954. So let's set the scene. It's a busy day at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. You've got the usual hustle and bustle of people coming and going. Everything seems totally normal until a certain man walks up to the immigration desk. Now, at first glance, there was nothing weird about this guy. He looked like your typical international businessman. Well-dressed, middle-aged, had a beard. He spoke French, but he was also totally fluent in Japanese and a few other languages. He told the officials this was his 3rd business trip to Japan just that year. So far, so good, right? Nothing seemed out of place. Yet. And then they looked at his passport. And that's when the first major red flag went up. The document itself, it looked completely legit. It even had stamps from his other trips to Japan. But the country that issued it? Taured. The customs officers looked at each other. Taured? They'd never heard of it. They asked around, checked their lists. Nope. The country simply did not exist. So they confront the man about this, and he's the one who's confused. He just confidently states that his home country, Taured, is a proud nation with 1,000 years of history. And he wasn't being difficult or telling a joke. He seemed genuinely shocked that these officials had somehow never heard of his country. Okay, so the officials figure, let's clear this up right now. They pull out a world map, spread it on the counter, and ask him to just point to where Taured is. Can you just imagine the tension in that little room as this guy scans the map looking for a home that apparently isn't there? He doesn't hesitate.
He points right to the area between France and Spain, exactly where the Principality of Andorra is. But then he gets visibly angry and agitated. He insists that this country on the map should be called Taured, not Andorra. To him, Andorra didn't exist. Only Taured did, and it had for 1,000 years. At this point, you can imagine the officials were deeply suspicious. I mean, is this guy a spy? Some kind of elaborate criminal? The investigation into this very, very strange visitor was about to get a lot deeper. So they started making some calls, and his entire story just completely crumbled. The Japanese company he said he had a meeting with? Yeah, they'd never heard of him. The hotel where he insisted he had a reservation? Nope, no booking under his name. And get this, the bank that was listed on his checks? It didn't even exist. With zero answers and a mystery that was getting weirder by the minute, the authorities decided to detain him for the night. And this, my friends, is where the story goes from just being strange to being flat out impossible. Okay, so they put him up in a hotel room close to the airport. The security was super tight. We're talking 2 guards posted right outside the room's only door. The room itself was several floors up, and it didn't have a balcony or any other way out. It was basically a sealed box. And yet, the next morning, when the officials unlocked the door and went inside, he was gone. The room was empty. He had completely vanished into thin air from a locked room with 2 guards outside the door, high above the ground. There was absolutely no sign of how he could have possibly gotten out. But wait a second. Even if the guy somehow teleported out of there, what about all of his stuff? You know, the physical evidence. The authorities had confiscated everything. This is the craziest part. His passport, his driver's license, his checkbook, all from the non-existent country of Taured, had also vanished from the airport's high security office. It wasn't just the man who was gone. Every single piece of evidence that proved he ever existed in the first place was gone too.
So, what in the world happened here? Was this just some incredibly elaborate prank? Or was it something far, far stranger? This whole thing leads us to some pretty wild theories.
The most popular theory, and the one that's the most fun to think about, is that the man from Taured was an accidental traveler from another dimension. The idea is that he somehow slipped through a cosmic crack, maybe a wormhole, from a parallel Earth, a world almost exactly like ours, except for one tiny detail. The country we call Andorra has always been named Taured.
It's an absolutely mind-bending theory, right? But before we get totally lost in the multiverse, there is another possibility. One that pulls this whole story out of science fiction and drops it right into the world of a simple crime. I want you to meet John Allen Kuchar Zegras. Now, in 1960, which is 6 years after the Taured story supposedly took place, this Zegras guy was arrested in Tokyo for trying to cash fake checks. And guess what he was carrying? A homemade passport from a country he made up. He said its capital was Tamanrasset, which is actually a real place in Algeria. Some people think Taured might just be a misspelling of Tuareg, a group of people from that same region. Zegras was a simple con man. He was caught, and he was sentenced to a year in prison. No vanishing act, no mystery. So, is that it? Is the legendary story of the man from Taured just a blown-up, exaggerated version of the John Zegras story? I mean, it seems pretty plausible, but it doesn't quite explain everything. There are still some pretty big questions hanging in the air. For one, if it's all based on Zegras, why does every version of the Taured story say it happened in 1954, 6 years earlier? And more importantly, the Zegras story is missing the one detail that makes this whole thing so legendary: the impossible vanishing act from a locked, guarded hotel room. Not to mention his documents disappearing from a secure office. So, what are we supposed to believe? In the end, we're left with a choice, really. Was it a con man's story that just got twisted and exaggerated over the years? Or was it a genuine, undeniable glitch in the fabric of our reality? Did the man from Taured ever make it back to his Earth, the one where his home has always existed? Or is he still out there somewhere, lost in a world that isn't his? It really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
The man from Taured vanished as if he were never part of our world, leaving behind only the memory of a country that doesn't exist. Was he a glitch in the fabric of reality? While some vanish from locked rooms, others are found in plain sight, yet remain equally invisible. Stay tuned, because case number 9 takes us to a quiet beach in Australia, where a well-dressed man was found dead with no identity, no labels on his clothes, and a secret code that would baffle the world for 7 decades. This is Terminal Trace.